Welcome to Wings3D. This is an introduction to Wings3D, so it's for absolute beginners. Now you'll notice straight away that there aren't any tool icons for doing things. That leaves you with a nice big clean screen, and you get the tools by clicking your right mouse button. I'll get into that later. First of all, I'll point out that the axes, which we can turn off and on again, are probably slightly different to the program that you usually use. Some programs, particularly games, are like this. As is usually the case, the red axis is your backwards and forwards. But the different bit is the blue axis, which is the Z, is left and right. And the green axis, which is the Y, is up and down. So that might differ, but don't worry about it, we can change it at the end. Now we have a menu at the top, which includes file for saving and exporting and importing. And there are many different formats, so you've got nothing to worry about there. There's edit, view, select, tools, window, develop and help. And this is your action bar underneath. Now then, you've got open for opening a new file. You've got save for a quick save of a file. You've got undo for undoing your last whatever you did that you didn't want to do. And then you've got redo in case you've changed your mind. Now the important bit is this bit in the middle. These 4 boxes are your selection modes, and you use those quite a lot because you need to move into different modes. For instance, the first one here, that's a dot. Now that is a vertex, that is vertex mode. And that's for, as I say, moving and selecting dots. The next is the edge mode. That's a line because vertices are joined together by lines or edges. Then we've got face mode. Now when you join 3 or more edges together, you form a polygon or a face. And then finally we have body mode. That is selecting an entire object. You can have more than one object. Right, so how do we actually create things? Well, first of all, I should point out, your left mouse button is to select. Your right mouse button is to pick an option. So we want options. Now there's an empty screen, so nothing is selected. Right click and we suddenly get a menu. These are primitive objects. You can also create text and lights and all sorts of other things, but mainly we're going to be looking at these primitive objects. The first one is cube. So let's try that. So you left click on cube and you've got a box. Now before we do anything else, I'm going to get that box out of the way. So I've selected it. Now I'm going to right click and now you'll see that it's a different list now because we've got something selected and we get a different menu for each way we select. So let's go for move. I click on move and it wants to know what axes I'm going to move on. I'm going to say X. So here we go, move on the X axis, and if I move my mouse to the left, it goes backwards. Move it to the right and it comes forwards again. Very easy. I'll deselect that. Now I want to show you something else. I'm going to create another shape. I'm going to create a cylinder, but I don't want a default cylinder. I want to make it specific. So I'm going to right click, and now on cylinder, instead of left clicking on cylinder, I'm going to right click on cylinder. And there we go. We've now got cylinder options. Now look at those options for the sections. The default is 16 sections. Well, let's see what happens if I change 16 to 32. I type in 32. I've not got my keyboard plugged in. There we go. Type in 32 and it's smoother. And we can also change the top axes, the radius. The radius is set at 1 as default. Let's set it at 0.5 and see what that does. Well, let's try it at 2. Right, let's set it back at 1 again. There we go. Now, something else we can do is we can change the cylinder type. So we could make it a tube, or we could make it a gear. Let's click for gear. There we go, we've got a gear. We can also change the height. Let's change the height to 1. There we go, it's smaller. So once you're happy with it, you press the OK button there. Now then, it's still too big, too thick for a gear, so select it in body mode, right click. I'm going to scale axis and scale on Y. Now if I move my mouse to the left, it gets smaller. Move the mouse to the right and it gets bigger. Now you can see the percentage in the top right corner. If you look in the left corner. If you look in the top left corner, you'll see the percentage. Okay, we'll see that one. Now, what if we want to actually change the shape? Well, there's many ways of doing that. Let's deselect it. Now let's go to face mode and select just the top. Now, I'm going to extrude it. So we right click, pick extrude. Now on the axes we can either extrude normal or extrude Y to go straight up. Let's go straight up, there we go. Now extruding normal in this case would also have made it go straight up, because extrude normal means to extrude on whichever way it's pointing or facing, and it's facing straight up. Now if you want to see differently, actually, shall we make that conical? Right click, scale uniform. Scale uniform means it's going to scale equally in both ways, in the Z and the X. I'll show you what I mean. There we go. Now if I press space, it deselects. Now let's say I wanted to make arms. Let's say we go there, click these bits. Now I can't see the back, so if I just click or depress the mouse wheel downwards once, not scrolling, I can now orbit my camera by moving the mouse around. Then left click and I get out of cam mode. Keep selecting more of these side bits here. I'm going to have to move the camera again. Now remember that to orbit your camera, all you've got to do is press the mouse wheel or the middle mouse button. Depends on what sort of mouse you've got. Most people these days have one that's got a wheel. Okay, there we go. We've got all those selected. Now let's see what happens if I extrude normal. Well, right click, extrude, normal, and there you see it goes out in different directions, in each case whichever the face is pointing at. And if you want to deselect everything at once, you press your space bar. Well, we've already created a very interesting shape, and it was very easy. So I think that's enough for today. So that's the end of lesson 1.